Good morning. It is 1 o'clock according to Apple, at least on my watch. And we are calling to order the Board of State and Community Corrections meeting. It is a specially calendared meeting to go over a couple of items of interest. I'd like to welcome all of the board members and those board members who are Zooming in. Supervisor Chavez and Judge Guard are Zooming. We also have other staff members we'll discuss later on Zoom. So welcome to those of you on Zoom and to all of you in the room today. As I said earlier, this meeting is really to address two specific items of importance. One being our new obligations that were created in fiscal year 22-23 budget. And we'll get to those following our agenda item B, which is suitability issues at Los Angeles County Central Juvenile Hall. So with that said, we're going to go over our regular item of importance, which is how to participate in this meeting remotely. So Adam, if you don't mind taking that item from me and handling it. And as I hand that off, please, all the board members, remember, if you have your microphone on, they are extremely sensitive and they will even pick up you typing on your device. So make sure it's off if you're not willing to be overheard.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I will give instructions for this meeting. We are using the Zoom webinar platform for board members who are attending remotely, and we will support public participation during this meeting. If you are connecting by phone, please be sure to mute your microphones or phone by dialing *6 to mute and unmute. When you are called upon to speak, please eliminate background noise before unmuting your microphone. If we missed you, please send a written comment to publiccomment@dscc.ca.gov. The email is available on our website as well. Board members in person and on Zoom, if you wish to make a public comment on any of the agenda items, please use the raise hand feature on your Zoom. Or physically raise your hand so we could see you. For members in the boardroom, please state your name before you make your comment so that the participants remotely may know who is speaking. Members of the public, we will give the members of the public the opportunity to comment after the presentation of each agenda item and prior to the board voting on the item. Agenda item 6 is the opportunity for any member of the public to make a comment on any agenda item or other comments in general. You will have 2 minutes for your comment. Participants on Zoom who wish to make a public comment, again, please email publiccomment@dscc.ca.gov with your name and the agenda item you'd like to comment on. You can also use the raise hand feature on your Zoom application. If you're calling by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand. I will call out the phone number you dialed in with. Unmute your phone by dialing *6. We will lower your hand once your name is received. Once you've raised your hand, we have your name on our list. We will get to you. You do not need to raise your hand again. Public participants in the boardroom, please complete the public comment card on the table by the entry door and provide it to me during the meeting. All agenda items that require a vote during this meeting will require a roll call vote, and I will call out each member's name at the end of each agenda item. As Chairperson stated, board members in the room, please turn off your microphones when you are not speaking. Remote members and public members on Zoom, please also mute yourselves when you are not speaking. We thank you for your patience. Madam Chair, that concludes my instructions.
Board member Bunyan has joined us via Zoom. Morning, Scott.
Linda, is your mic on? I can't hear you.
That is a really good point. Adam has been so careful about not having mics on. I just decided not to turn mine on. Good morning, Scott. Thank you for joining us. I would like a quick report out on where possibly, there's Kathy Allison, and I'm
There
guessing
she
Guillermo's right behind her.
is,
Thank
and
you, thank
Guillermo,
you.
terrific, perfect timing.
All right, and we're simply now waiting for
Norma,
Norma, and we know she's in
En
route
route.
from the
Mhm.
airport. Okay, perfect, perfect. Good morning, good to see you. All right, hi, how are you?
That's right.
We always know when CDCR is late, there's plenty of work to be done, so we're very forgiving about that. Katie, I think we'll move on with your executive director's report.
I do not have anything substantive, but may I have a point of personal privilege?
Yes, you may.
It is Chair Penner's birthday
Oh,
today.
my God. Yeah, that's.
And there are some lovely mini cupcakes in the back of the room. You may stealthily walk and grab one. You may take one on your way out, whatever it is. I don't believe it's necessary to sing, but I just wanted to wish
Oh.
Linda a very happy birthday.
Thank you, thank you, thank you all. When they said, what do you want for your birthday? I said, I want a board meeting. So I'm super happy we got that. So it worked out just perfect. Yeah, yeah, I don't have many friends, so it's good to have all you with me. It really was helpful. Yes, yes. So Katie, anything else?
Just an acknowledgement. Several years ago, when we got in the habit of calendaring our board meetings a whole year out, we would say sometimes we're going to need a July board meeting to address time-sensitive issues that have come through in the budget. And for the last 4 years, with each new budget, there is a longer and longer list of new responsibilities coming to the BSCC. And I take that as a reflection of the very, very, very good work of our team, particularly in the grants area. When we get to Ricardo's lengthy section of the agenda today, you will see, and thank you to all the board members, we'll be starting 4 new executive steering committees reflecting 5 new competitive grant programs. There's also a contract on your agenda today, and there are some pass-through grants as well. So we are working hard in many, many ways, and I want to express my gratitude to all on the team. And then, of course, the main order of business today that we'll start off with is the Los Angeles suitability determination. So there's just been a great deal going on, and I want everyone to know that our team is working really hard. Thank you. That's all I have.
Oh, I appreciate that. And it may come to a point where next year you see us actually scheduling the meeting in advance because we haven't gone without it in many years.
That's
and
right.
It probably helps all of you as you continue to schedule. Aaron, anything on the legal front you'd like to report out on?
Nothing in particular, Madam Chair. What I do have is, and we mentioned before the meeting began, is we've got a number of potential recusals we have given the number of grants that Katie just referred to, and we'll hit those as we go along. But a lot of funds potentially going to local law enforcement agencies. So I'd ask our county and Chief Mills to make particular note of items E, F, and H as we go along with those. And with that, Madam Chair, I'd also like to turn it back over to Adam briefly so that he can call the roll.
Okay, Adam,
Chair Penner,
present?
Ms. Allison,
Present.
Mr. Villarosa,
Present.
Mr. Groudon is absent today. Mr. Dykes,
Present.
Ms. Chavez,
Here.
Mr. Haynes,
Present.
Ms. Vernon,
Present.
Ms. Guard,
Here.
Mr. Mills,
Present.
Mr. Budnick,
Here.
Mr. Garcia.
Here.
And Ms. Kumpion will be joining us later. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Adam. We're going to move now to item 4 on our information items, and that is notice of the fiscal year 2022 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Grant application. Ricardo, how are you?
Great. Thank you so much. Happy birthday.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, well, again, good afternoon, Madam Chair and board members. Deputy Director Ricardo Goodrich with the Corrections, Planning and Grants Programs Division, presenting the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant information item. The BSCC is the designated state administrative agency for the federally funded Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Program, better known as JAG. Historically, JAG has been the primary source of federal criminal justice funding to states and local jurisdictions. A key requirement of the application process is the development of a multi-year state strategy and selection of program purpose areas. As a refresher, in September 2020, the BSEC began the process of gathering information and data to inform and update to California's multi-year JAG state strategy. In partnership with the National Criminal Justice Association, the BSEC gathered input from interested parties through a year-long public input process consisting of 2 virtual listening sessions, a written comment period, and a web-based survey. Despite our best outreach efforts, the level of public input around the program purpose areas the JAG program should prioritize was not as robust as with prior years. As an example, 890 responses were received to the 2013 JAG survey, and 85 responses were received to the 2021 survey. Nonetheless, we did receive consistent input on ideas for new program purpose areas through the strategic planning effort, as we reported to the board back in November of 2021. For the next multi-year state strategy, we are planning to combine the information received from the most recent planning process with the program purpose areas that have been in place since 2013. 2 new program purpose areas emerged from the recent strategic planning process, and a third has been one of the 3 ongoing program purpose areas since 2013. Our recommendation to the board today is to expand the existing program purpose areas by adding 2 new program purpose areas for inclusion in the updated multi-year state strategy. We have color-coded the program purpose areas so you can easily see which ones are new and which are ongoing. And that's available on the screen right now. The new program purpose areas are represented in blue, that's that top line, and include mental health programs and related law enforcement and corrections programs, and drug treatment and enforcement programs. The overlapping program purpose area is represented in green and includes prevention and education programs. The ongoing program purpose areas are represented in gold or maybe yellow and include law enforcement programs and prosecution and court programs. We have suggested updated priority areas of need too, and those are reflected beneath each of the program purpose areas that you see there as well. We look forward to submitting the JAG application next week in advance of the August 1 due date. The next step in the grant development process will be to update the JAG RFP and bring it to the board for approval at the September board meeting. We had initially planned to have that for your review today. We wanted to take the step of completing the application first and then coming back to the board with a revised RFP. Madam Chair and board members, this concludes staff's presentation and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ricardo. Looking at the board, any questions or comments on this item? It could be slightly confusing. I think in a nutshell, we've tried to honor all perspective areas of importance. And I was happy to see that the 2 additions to these purpose areas were certainly timely and meaningful to the kind of work we do. So anything? Anybody? Okay, yes.
I have a question. It was really striking to hear that back in 2013, we had hundreds of survey results, and I know many of us are aware of the pandemic we've been living in. Can you speak more about like the challenges around getting surveys? Is that the result why we got less, or?
Yeah, no, we've certainly struggled with answering a lot of those kind of, what's the result type questions. And it could be that there is some survey fatigue. It could be that certainly, with the pandemic, folks were juggling other priorities, and the JAG program has been around and it's starting to stabilize. And maybe for some folks, you don't want to say they took it for granted, but, weighing all the different priority areas and maybe perhaps, while very important, this may have taken a backseat to some of the other COVID related things that folks were focusing on. So it certainly, was a little bit unexpected, but, we did our best to at least honor the results that did in fact come in, at least through that process.
And I see Supervisor Chavez has her hand up.
Thank you. Thank you. That was actually part of my question as well. The other thing I'm interested in understanding is when we get feedback on different issues, and I'm particularly thinking about this relative to behavioral health and mental health. Do the way the program is it designed to allow for all out of custody support or in custody support as well? Or is it a combination of those two things?
Yeah, so the way that this alliteration is designed, there's actually flexibility to do a little bit of both. So what will happen, and I alluded to this a little bit earlier, is in September, the board will get an RFP that outlines a timeline and a map, so to speak. And part of that will include a public comment process that kind of delves down even further into some of the areas of need. And that could be an opportunity for folks to fine tune it even further. But as of right now, that option to do both is available.
And then the last question, and this kind of goes back to the survey. I just wonder how needs assessments can be done with everybody sort of tapped out. I mean, because there's some, some particulars at a local level where governments may put some more money into behavioral health, but not enough money into, another kind of intervention. And so I'm just wondering if there's a way to understand if there needs to be some sort of flexibility in the way that dollars are made available based on those local decisions.
I think a sort of a overarching answer to your question is the grant money will go out with these priorities included. Various jurisdictions will respond in a way that we hope suits that community needs, just as you referenced in your comments. And while we may prioritize some rating factors having to do with specific areas, we don't generate or we don't create anything in the grant arena after we've put out the RFP. I hope I'm making myself clear. I don't seem very clear to myself.
Linda, that's maybe you already got into the cupcakes, but you know what?
Yeah.
Just my thinking there is that I have been thinking a lot about how at a state level we can create more flexibility in our grant making so that at a local level it allows organizations, instead of, for example, defining that we're going to have this much money available in behavioral health, but if the overall goal was we want to see these series of interventions, essentially, would it be possible for us to look at the RFPs more as block grants so that local jurisdictions can fill in gaps versus just applying for monies that may allow them to fill in the gaps? At a local level, we're trying to do the same thing with some of our nonprofits that are able to raise money, for example, to do part of their work, and then being less restrictive on the use of funds, as long as they have the total outcomes that we're looking at. So anyway, thank you. That does clear it up for me, Linda, but that's why I was asking.
Yeah, go ahead.
Madam Chair, thank you. I want to say a little bit in response to what Supervisor Chavez asked, and then to address a little bit in addition, Miguel's first question. And Supervisor Chavez, I think the way you just described it is where we're hoping to land. Of course, there are a lot of requirements when it's federal funds about, how directive the RFP needs to be, but we will absolutely want that RFP to provide the greatest amount of flexibility possible. Oftentimes we'll have a proposal come in that says, we plan to address 3 of these 5 program purpose areas. So it's not a really directed, this pot has to fund this percent and that sort of thing. So there is a lot of flexibility for the locals in how they put their proposals together. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, and if Scott Budnick is here and wants to jump in to Miguel's question, in 2013, and this is when Linda and I were brand new in our roles, there was a tremendous amount of interest in the Burn JAG funding at the time, and a real effort, a broad-based effort to sort of rethink the JAG program. And I think that's what accounted for that very, very high number of survey responses. For many, many decades, the JAG funding had gone exclusively to law enforcement to fund multi-jurisdictional drug task forces. And that was no longer seen as what should be the top priority for the state of California. Over the years, we've used those 3 program purpose areas that Ricardo showed on the slide, and now we're adding 2 more. So my view is that we're evolving the program to make the reach broader and maintaining what has worked, I think, really well for the field since we made a huge shift in 2013. And then all the other things about why the low survey responses, I think people have weighed in with some really clear insight on that as well.
And I'd piggyback to say, we're suffering the same sort of fatigue and lack of response as we try to populate these executive steering committees. So I wasn't at all surprised that the survey kind of got the low ebb, disappointed, but not shocked. And we're struggling getting people to participate in our executive steering committee process. And later in this agenda, you're going to see how many we're going to roll out, and we're going to really work hard to get participants on those. And it's just a little more of a uphill climb than it used to be. I think that's fair to say. Anybody wish to public comment on any of the information items, Adam?
I have no public comment.
Okay, and then I would just remind everybody out there in the public, use the raise hand feature on the Zoom meeting, and Adam will recognize you. Yes.
Madam Chair, we actually have 2 members of the public who wants to comment on the information items.
Okay.
And that would be Nancy Juarez.
Hello, my name is Nancy Juarez with the Center on Juvenile and Criminal Justice based in San Francisco. We are disheartened to see that the BSCC removed the COVID-19 update from this meeting. Meanwhile, we know COVID numbers are spiking across local justice facilities that the BSCC oversees. Considering the current variants of COVID are highly contagious, there's an urgent need for a comprehensive vaccine education for both staff and incarcerated people. We know misinformation has led to widespread vaccine hesitancy, which I can understand when protocols for COVID positive people are punitive and harmful and often result in separating incarcerated children and adults from programming and services. Just a few months ago, you all found a young person in LA Juvenile Hall under room confinement for 11 days without programming or recreational time due to a false negative test or false positive test. Individuals should not be thrown into room confinement. The BSCC should ensure that facilities put in place safety measures that are not punitive in nature or out of step with regulations and standards that they must abide by. These are inappropriate responses that do not incentivize reporting or obtaining vaccine. I think if the BSCC were to change this around, they would see that, in the last reporting period, LA County tested less than 3% of its jail population, despite housing far more incarcerated people than any other county in the state. If this was not punishment, maybe y'all would see a lot more folks being tested regularly. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next is Avalon Edwards.
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Avalon Edwards. I'm a policy associate with Starting Over Inc., which is based in Riverside County. I want to second everything that Nancy just said. It's incredibly disheartening and disturbing that the BSCC has chosen to remove COVID updates from the agenda, considering that current variants and dominant variants of the virus are incredibly contagious. We already know, we're 2 years into this, right? We already know that jails and prisons are hotbeds for infection, right? We already know, especially jails where we have correctional officers and folks going in and out of the facility constantly. This is a massive problem, not just for folks inside custody and for staff, but for folks in the community, right? And so I just want to talk a little bit about the limits of what the BSCC is already doing around COVID. Due to community advocacy, due to the voices of those directly impacted by incarceration, the BSCC started collecting testing data back in 2020 after months of advocacy. And yet we see continuously that data is insufficient. There are counties like Sacramento that refuses to submit any COVID testing data to the BSCC. And like Nancy said, huge counties like LA are testing less than 3% of their jail populations, when we know that the science says that potentially as much as 60% of folks with COVID are asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic. We know that testing folks that have symptoms and nobody else is not sufficient. This is not a prevention plan. This is not a safety plan, and we're endangering the lives and the well-being of folks in custody. this shouldn't even be a conversation this far into this pandemic. I don't understand why it wasn't on the agenda. We know that sheriffs are intentionally spreading misinformation about the virus and the vaccines. We know that the Riverside County Sheriff refuses to ask his staff to get vaccinated. And we know that the current protocols in place for when folks test positive is to punish them. It's to put them in solitary, strip them of services and programming, separate them from their families, and do nothing to ensure that they actually get better. This is not COVID prevention. This is not public health. This is not public safety. So I'd like to hear some members of the board speak to that and why this is no longer a priority for this board to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you, Avalon. I appreciate your remarks, and I please don't get the impression that we are taking these off the agenda. Carte blanche, this is only for this meeting, and this is a very specific meeting on 2 items. We continue to collect that data, and we will publish that data and discuss that data at every meeting. So I'm sorry if you got the impression this was something that was no longer going to be considered or delivered to this body. Thank you, Adam.
That's it for public comment.
Thank you. Back to the agenda. We now have consent items. The only matter on the consent agenda is the meeting minutes from the June 9th meeting. Anybody wish to pull that item or comment on that item? Seeing none, I think we'll entertain a motion and a vote. I'm sorry, anyone in the public wish to pull the minutes?
There are no public comments for agenda item 8.
Thank you, Adam. Looking for a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Second,
I'll second.
all in favor? Oh, I apologize. Back to Zoom time, huh? I thought I was getting a little quick and ahead of myself. Adam, please take the roll.
Chair Penner,
Aye.
Ms. Allison,
Aye.
Mr. Villarosa,
Aye.
Mr. Dykes,
Aye.
Ms. Chavez,
Yes.
Mr. Haynes,
Aye.
Ms. Vernon,
Aye.
Ms. Guard,
Aye.
Mr. Mills,
Aye.
Mr. Butnick,
Aye.
Mr. Garcia.
Aye.
Ms. Kumpion.
Aye.
Madam Chair, the motion carries for agenda item A.
Thank you and welcome, Ms. Cumbia. Sorry about that plane not honoring the BSCC schedule. Yeah, I appreciate you making it. I'm sure it was less than pleasant stressing yourself all the way here, but thank you so much. Now moving on to the action items, and we will begin with item B, and presenting for us via Zoom is Allison Ganter. Hello, Allison.
Hi, good afternoon, Madam Chair, board members, members of the public and colleagues. I'm Allison Ganter, Deputy Director of the Facility Standards and Operations Division, and I'm here to present on agenda item B, the reinspection of the Los Angeles County Probation Department Central Juvenile Hall, and to provide a little background for the board's determination of suitability for the facility for the confinement of minors of that facility.
And Adam, Allison, if you don't mind, I'm going to pause for just a minute
Sure.
there to indicate 2 things. Miguel Garcia is recusing his self on this item and has left the room. Joining us from LA County, I think I see Chief Adolfo Garcia there, and I think Gonzalez, what did I say? Gonzalez, and I think I see Karen Fletcher. It's a long way away from my old eyes. Welcome to both of you, and thank you for joining us. Judge Guard is also, it's hard to keep track of all the moving parts in this meeting. Yes, thank you. And Judge Guard has also recused herself. Moving right along, Allison, thank you.
Oh, no worries. Thank you, Madam Chair. And as I begin, I've said this many times over the last year, I'm incredibly grateful to Lisa Southwell for the time and energy she's spent on working in Los Angeles and her diligence to see this process through. Thank you so much, Lisa, for your hard work on this incredibly important matter. So a little bit of background for the board and for members of the public. In November of 2021, the Central Juvenile Hall was notified that they were out of compliance with additional sections of Title 15, including Section 1328 safety checks. And after submitting a corrective action plan in December 2021, the facility was scheduled to be re-inspected in March of 2022 for a determination of suitability at the April 2022 board meeting. That determination was not made because the Los Angeles County Probation Department removed youth from that facility from March through late May of this year. After the youth returned to the facility, Field Representative Lisa Southwell conducted the re-inspection and determined that the facility remained out of compliance with Section 1328, in large part because video review indicated that staff were documenting that safety checks were being documented, but video showed that the safety checks had not been conducted. And most recently, at the last board meeting on June 9th, the Los Angeles County Probation Department Central Juvenile Hall was found unsuitable for the confinement of minors. The board noticed the Los Angeles County Probation Department of unsuitability on June 13th, 2022, and gave the department 60 days from that date until August 12th of this year to come into compliance with Section 1328 safety checks. Between July 18th and 20th, just a few short days ago, Lisa completed a re-inspection of the Central Juvenile Hall safety check documentation to determine compliance with Section 1328 safety checks. During this re-inspection, Lisa reviewed 325 safety checks across all shifts and units and reviewed video documentation of safety checks to verify compliance. Based upon this re-inspection and review, BSCC staff determined that the Central Juvenile Hall complies with Section 1328 safety checks. In addition, BSCC staff verified that safety checks were completed by reviewing video. In addition, Lisa conducted an unannounced inspection during the evening hours at the Central Juvenile Hall just a few days ago on Friday, July 22nd. The unannounced inspection was triggered in part because I received an email late last week from a person claiming to be a Central Juvenile Hall staff, alleging that documentation around safety checks was being completed prior to safety checks being conducted. During her unannounced inspection, Ms. Southwell observed staff and supervisors completing safety checks in person. She reviewed safety check documentation as it was being filled out and confirmed that it was not being filled out ahead of time. She found compliance during that inspection. Any discrepancies were not patterns of non-compliance and will be addressed through the departmental process. During re-inspection, Lisa was also able to verify that the department has finally implemented their corrective action plan for administrative review, oversight, and observation of safety check documentation. The county is addressing issues with individual officers through performance management. The department has also purchased atomic synchronized clocks to ensure consistent timekeeping. Staff is recommending that BSCC staff continue to review administrative review of safety check documentation to further monitor this implementation. BSCC staff is also aware that over the last few weeks, the Los Angeles County Probation Department has deployed additional staff, including managers and supervisors from the field, to focus on conducting safety checks to assist with achieving compliance. We understand that the department will be reassigning staff to both Central and Barry J. Neidorf juvenile halls to temporarily assist with staffing shortages. Another critical issue related to staffing is the fact there continue to be sick outs from Central Juvenile Hall staff. These issues will need to be addressed by the department to ensure compliance and continued suitability. BSCC staff strongly recommends that the department continue to assign at least one posted position dedicated to each building for the sole purpose of conducting safety checks. This recommendation will ensure that safety checks are completed in accordance with regulation, as well as ensuring the safety of the youth in the care of the county. This finding of technical compliance does not eliminate the longstanding issues remaining at the juvenile halls in Los Angeles County. The department must continue to adopt and build upon critical and urgent systemic change, including assurance that there is adequate staff to carry out Title 15 functions and keep young people and staff safe, and that functions are being conducted accurately and without question of fraud. This has been a long and difficult process, and we have focused necessary energy and resources ensuring safe operations in compliance in Los Angeles County. And with that, Madam Chair, I give you staff's recommendation to find the Los Angeles County Probation Department Central Juvenile Hall compliant with 1328 safety checks at this time, and recommend that the board find the facility suitable at this time for housing youth. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Allison. As I am tempted to return to the board, I inquire of the board if it would be desirable of them hearing from LA prior to our comments or after our comments?
Yes, please.
I would agree that it would be
Okay.
good to hear
Thank you,
from
thank
Chief
you.
Gonzalez.
Okay, Chief, yeah, we're listening and welcome your remarks.
Madam Chair, members of the board, good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me this opportunity to share some of the accomplishments and to discuss the steps that Los Angeles County Probation Department continues to take to maintain and ensure compliance with Title 15 regulations. Today, I'm joined by Chief Deputy Karen Fletcher remotely, Chief Adam Bettino, Bureau Chief of Juvenile Halls, Ms. Valerie Van Kirk, and our Director of Finance and Purchasing and Contracts, Mr. Robert Smythe. I'm very proud of the work our staff has done to achieve compliance with Central Juvenile Hall by remedying the only area that was identified as non-compliance was its safety checks. After the BSCC meeting of June 9th, 2022, we implemented and issued a revised safety checklist and instructional manual to all juvenile hall staff, which will assist us in addressing the specific areas of concern and specific areas of non-compliance. Our BSCC compliance unit put hundreds of hours reviewing video, documentation, and providing technical assistance where appropriate in various areas of concern. Our directors stepped up and actively counseled staff who were not following policy and provided corrective action and appropriate referral for further investigation where appropriate. Earlier this month, we also welcomed new supervisors to both juvenile halls who are committed to ensuring that our youth are receiving the best care possible and that our staff are receiving support necessary for them to successfully do their jobs. They continue to be trained on various policies and procedures, require them to be effective in their new roles. They're committed and have hit the ground running. We're currently in the middle of a solicitation process for the procurement of a room confinement and safety checks electronic system, and we hope to have the system in place hopefully by the end of the year, if not sooner. Over the last year, we have made a lot of progress, but we know this is only the beginning. We are pressing on because we believe that our youth and our staff deserve better. As been mentioned, staffing continues to be a significant concern for us. We have a significant number of vacant positions in our juvenile hall being held because of hiring freeze. Additionally, we have a large number of staff on leave for a variety of reasons, including light duty, and officers who routinely call out for their shifts. As a result of the challenges, we have been forced to hold staff on overtime, mandatory overtime, and require field staff to be deployed to juvenile halls to assist us there. We continue to address these challenges by meeting with our county leadership, CO's office, Department of Human Resources, and of course, our Board of Supervisors. In closing, we remain committed to getting and maintaining compliance. We have proven that progress is possible, as demonstrated by the changes we have been able to implement. I welcome any questions from the board.
Thank you. Back to the board. Let me begin by, I mean, it is difficult, as we say that they are now in compliance in LA, to have an expectation, or, you know, I still have grave concerns about whether they can remain in compliance. We have had repeated board meetings trying to address the suitability of LA. And while we find them in compliance today, and that is the recommendation coming from our staff, I continue to have concerns. I am heartened by the fact that as we complete this item, should the board vote to support that, we will begin immediately our new inspection cycle. And with that, I have some confidence that we will be in LA County Juvenile Hall, seeing what's going on a regular basis until we complete that inspection cycle. With all of that said, I'm troubled also to hear that we're talking about a room check system that could take until the end of this year. I'm troubled by hiring freezes at a time when it's obvious that this organization needs staff, and I'm struggling with confidence that you'll be able to remain in compliance on these issues without the support and the desired expediency to complete some, what I consider perfunctory changes to a facility that will make a big difference as you move down the road, as we talk about these items of compliance. I know that Lisa and our staff will remain in the institution, and we will react as soon as we learn of matters of non-compliance. But I do feel like, in my mind, that we have to accept the recommendation of our staff, who has gone in and done a most very recent inspection and found them to be suitable on this item. So I turn to the board for any comments that you may have. Scott's first. Okay, Scott?
Yes, thank you. I am really nervous, and Chief knows I'm in the juvenile hall every weekend. Really, really nervous about the amount of staff that are not showing up to work ever, and the amount of staff that are calling out routinely. I was just in a unit with about 18 young men, with one staff member, one very small staff member there. And it was clear that if something were to happen, then this staff member also did not have the main skill needed to work with this population, which is communication. And seems like half the staff, I mean, half, I don't know if that's a conservative or generous number, are simply not showing up for work. In any other job, you'd be fired. Somehow this is allowed to happen for months, if not years, and people aren't fired. And I say this as someone that cares deeply about the youth that are there, but also that someone that cares about the staff that I see there every single time I go in, who are always there, who are working doubles, triples, staying all night long, not going home to their family, because they know they're a law enforcement professional and they have to come to work and they have to work overtime if they need to. And they just are going to be there to support the kids and support their fellow staff. And I really want to know some real specifics about what's happening to staff members who continuously don't show up to work for months, for years. And what are we doing to remedy this? That's question number one. I have another one after this.
Is there any response from Los Angeles to Board Member Budnick?
The other numbers. This one. Scott, thank you for your question. And I know I see you there as well. You're always there supporting us at Barry J. So thank you for that. We've taken progressive discipline. We've been meeting with the Department of Human Resources for the county to assist us in this area. And what we have so far is 20.
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay, let me have Valerie explain the numbers so you can understand it better than I can.
So, yeah, let me. Hi, Valerie Bankirk, DSP Bureau Chief. We have recently in June began 5 worker supervisor conferences. In July, 15 worker supervisor conferences. We've issued a letter of warning in July, and we have recently referred 1
referral to PMU and IA. We are addressing the attendance on a daily basis through letters, worker supervisor. We're looking at attendance, call outs, medical notes, and issuing a time if the staff do not provide the proper documentation for for calling out and not coming to work.
Scott, A time refers to leave without pay.
Oh, I'm
And
sorry.
what are we doing to supplement staff, to replace the staff that choose not to come do their jobs?
We're in the process of working with CEO's office to get approval to hire. We have a list of candidates that went through the testing process, and we're ready to implement the hiring as soon as we get the green light, and we're hoping that happens here soon.
And other than hiring new staff, what about staff that are in the field or in camp? Since this SYTF population is a camp population that's being housed, not in a camp, but in a juvenile hall. I think Kilpatrick has 9 kids in it. I don't think Kilpatrick needs their full staff for 9 kids. Why aren't those Kilpatrick staff in force showing up for the other 50 or 60 kids that are their kids? They're currently sitting in a juvenile hall.
We started a good question. We started a redeployment of Kilpatrick staff to our facilities. But I hate to report that out of the 6 that were assigned to Barry J, only 3 showed up. Other 3 called out. And out of the 9 that were assigned to Central, only 2, I believe, showed up. So those are the ones that are being disciplined as well, as that we talked about just now.
I can also elaborate on that. As of today, we did have 10 Kilpatrick staff show up at Central Juvenile Hall.
That's a step in the right direction.
Right.
How do we sustain it is the real question. My second question has to do with Camp Kilpatrick. You guys are currently keeping the SYTF population still in a juvenile hall with no real outdoor rec space, no programming space. These numbers are rising from 30, 40, 50, 60 youth that are now sentenced SYTF. The plan was months ago to have them at Camp Kilpatrick and to open some other units at Barry J. Nydorf. That hasn't happened. I really would love to know why the first youth, you were talking about moving well-behaved programming youth. Obviously, there's dozens of kids amongst these 50 or 60 that are in college doing really, really well. Kids that would do really, really well in a camp setting. And obviously, there's some excellent staff that are there with them right now that really believe they should go over to Kilpatrick. And these are staff that advocate every week for these kids to go to Kilpatrick. What's the obstacle? Because every month it seems to get delayed. What's the obstacle?
We're in the middle of negotiations between labor and the union and the county, and that's one of the major obstacles. And we're trying to work through that to be able to do just what you're suggesting. And we've been trying to do this for the last couple of months, like probably even since May. The issue is that we get the county negotiation team meeting with the union regularly. A couple of meetings have been canceled. They had to be rescheduled, but we're trying to resolve that. At the same time, we're looking at, because I took a tour of Camp Kilpatrick, I think last week or the week before last. I saw the units where the youth will be housed, and I think we can make that happen as soon as we deal with this labor issue, bargaining rights, negotiation items.
So the only obstacle to getting the youth to a place where they can be rehabilitated is the union. There's no other obstacle.
That's the main one right now. The other one that I'm working on also is getting the programming support to come over there. I'm meeting with a couple of the supervisor districts that have a contract with a couple of providers to see how can we best service that. So we're looking at that possibility to have a programming in place ready to go. So when the youth come over there, they don't have a lot of idle time. It's programming that we would like to expand from Barry J, the compound. I hate the word compound. From Barry J over to Kilpatrick and get that going. So we can support our young people, both with academics, but also with technical, vocational training as well.
And your thought is still to start with the youth that have no behavior issues, that are running a really good program, that are in school and college, doing well?
Right. I'm also looking at even higher education for those who wish to pursue higher education.
So I don't understand why anyone would have a problem with those youth going to a place where they can actually be rehabilitated. So we can talk about this offline, but thank you for that information. It's shocking to me that the union still is in the way of this. I had conversations with folks in the union months ago, and they thought there was a quick resolution to it. So this is surprising information and upsetting information, because I personally know the youth that are there doing well, and they're youth that need to be over there, and they would be a huge asset to the staff over there and that facility.
Yes.
Kathleen Allison, CDCR. A couple questions. Chair Pinner mentioned a hiring freeze. So I want to get clarification. Is there a hiring freeze, or are you just down, you just have vacancies?
We've had a hiring freeze since January of last year. And we've been working with the CEO's office and with Department of Human Resources to see if we can lift that hiring freeze or authorize us to hire back for some of the positions that we currently have.
And that's for your peace officer staff that's watching your population?
That's for the juvenile side of the house, yes.
Okay. And then my next question would be, what is your vacancy rate and then your operational vacancy rate? So what I mean is how many true vacant positions, but when you add in all your sick calls, FLMA, whatever it may be, what is your operational vacancy rate?
The current vacant positions, we have about 370 in both juvenile halls. And I have to get the other data.
Out of how many, please?
About 47%.
47%. Thank you. And the sick calls are in addition to that?
Correct.
Wait, can I just clarify, Secretary Allison, the 47% are vacant positions that are not the folks that are calling out. They're just positions that were never filled.
Yeah.
And
I
then on
understand.
top of that, with what I'm told, half of the current positions are, do you have a number of what the actual percentage of folks who are routinely calling out? Is that half of your current staff or less or more?
So Chief, we have some numbers that we have reported through Department of Human Resources. So 807 positions across both halls, Berry J and Central. 370 of those positions, which is 46%, are vacant. Of the filled positions, we have 257 staff who are out on some sort of leave. That's 59% of the filled spots. That leaves us 180 positions. And that's 22% of the total number of positions that we have. Out of that 22%, then staff are calling out. We have anywhere from AM and PM shift, 30 to 50 across the two institutions that call out, up to 60 staff calling out across the two institutions on the weekends. So it's a significant call out even from the 180 that we have that are not on any type of leave.
How do those numbers correlate with your actual population? Meaning if you had 807, what was your highest population to what your population is now?
We can go back and look at the specifics. There has been a spike in the number of kids in our juvenile halls. And we are supplementing that staffing level to meet the ratios with our deployed staff. But we can get you that. Was it about 350 was one of the last counts across the two facilities.
So you're still able, even with this extreme vacancy rate, to meet your ratios per your population.
We're deploying about 950 staff to fill slots every month from the field. So with that field deployment, we are meeting the minimum staffing ratios.
Thank you.
Any other members? Oh, I see Supervisor Chavez hands up.
Thank you. Just to better understand this, with the hiring freeze, does that negate your ability to fill your current vacancies, or is that for new positions?
That's the current vacancy positions.
So for right now, you are not allowed to fill your 370 vacant positions.
Correct.
When we spoke last, you stated the county executive was working with you on recruitment strategies that would be taken to the Board of Supervisors. And is that still in process?
Yes. Last week, Karen and Adam, who are here on the call, met with the chiefs of staff and made a presentation to them. This weekend, as early as even as late as this morning, I've been in communication with the board and with the CEO's office to allow us to freeze or allow us to hire some of those vacancy positions that we would definitely need.
Do you know of the 370 positions, how many of them are funded and vacant versus unfunded and vacant?
All funded and vacant.
So with your department and your annual budget, are you able to count that that money toward balancing your budget, meaning that because they're vacant and funded, that you have the funding assigned to your department and you roll over the funding?
Let me ask Robert.
I think what you're referring to is what we call salary savings. And yes, we do generate salary savings from some of that. Some of it is also JPF funding, that's state funding for juvenile halls. We do not draw down the juvenile hall state funding because there's no expense against which to draw it down for. But yes, there are some salary savings generated. We do not roll over funding from one fiscal year to the next without permission of the CEO. Some of that money will be rolled over to pay for things like upgrades to juvenile halls and camps. That's the plan for the future. The fiscal year hasn't closed yet. It should close very soon, and we should have an accurate number on the amount of rollover funding very soon. That will be reallocated during what we call the supplemental budget, which occurs approximately the last week of September.
Thank you. That's very helpful. So to be clear, you are currently using salary savings, some of the salary savings for one-time investments in the facilities. You are unable to draw down full funding for positions, so you're leaving some amount of state money on the table because you're not utilizing that money. What exactly is the savings for the county keeping those 370 positions vacant?
I don't have that number specifically off my head, but a ballpark salaries plus benefits is somewhere between $90,000 and $100,000 per position. So it's probably $37 million. But there's other expenses that offset that. We believe our fund balance at the end of the year is going to be something like 12 or 13 million. That's department wide. That's not just the juvenile halls.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Colleagues, the reason I'm pressing on this, and I want to thank the chiefs and your staff for responding, is that I think that the staff here is going to be left in an untenable position if they're unable to make these investments. And I fear that even with the staff's, being able to say that today the actions taken by the facility have gotten them to the minimum standard, that it's really just a matter of and I think Chief Fletcher, when she pointed out that they're able to cover the minimum standard, that's very tentative given just the extreme numbers that we're discussing. And I don't know the appropriate way to communicate with the county, but I am really concerned about two issues: the safety of the staff that remains and the safety of the young folks that are in the care of the probation department. And I recognize, and I'm sure if Chair Penner, if I were near you, you would be looking at me to let me know what's within the purview of this committee and not. But I think one thing we can't do is ignore what we see as a looming crisis. And that crisis has not been abated, even though the particular issues that we were concerned about have been addressed, because they're not abated in perpetuity. They're abated in an environment where the staff is really constrained in terms of what they can accomplish. So I just will say, Chair Penner, that I would be very interested in us having some mechanism for conveying concern to the board, not in an effort to be, well, in an effort just to alert them to, I know they have many competing needs. I serve on a board, I understand that. But I think we have an opportunity to really lift up the needs of both the employees, but also the folks that are in their custodial care. Thank you.
And thank you. And Scott, I do see you have your hand raised, but prior to you speaking, I'd like to address your comments, Supervisor Chavez, because it becomes evident to me that there's a problem greater than what Los Angeles County Probation Department is faced with right here. And when we complete these proceedings, I think the purview of this board will expand. We were somewhat hampered by having this issue in front of us today, and doing any outreach or any commenting on any of this would have been inappropriate prior to finishing exactly what we're about to do here today, one way or the other. With that said, I think we will take a hard look at, how we address this bigger issue in Los Angeles County, the crisis that we are hearing about. And I can assure you that I heard what was being said today. I can do the numbers. I have run facilities. I do understand that grave of a vacancy rate in a county that's facing a hiring freeze. And while I'm not sure exactly how we will proceed, I can tell you that I hear you. And we'll consult counsel, and Katie and I will put our heads together, and we'll figure out just how we proceed from there on this very specific issue.
And,
Yes. Wait, did I put Scott on hold? So Scott, did you want to say something before we go back to the board that's here in person?
Well, I just wanted to thank Supervisor Chavez for hitting the nail right on the head. And that the issue is safety. These last few weeks, there have been major incidents in the juvenile hall where minors and staff have gotten hurt, been sent to the hospital, and literally dealing with bad apples that you can count on one hand. Kids who are not ready for change, that are very gang entrenched, very violent, that are making it impossible for the other 60 plus kids who are running a great program and doing great and making these changes to be able to be safe, to be in rehabilitation. And because staff are not showing up to work, there's nowhere to move these kids to get them to a safe environment, or to get the ones who are causing a lot of the problems to another environment where they can have we can begin the process on them. And so this lack of staffing is at the core of everything. And I thought that Chief Gonzalez and Ms. Fletcher and Mr. Patino and Bureau Chief and everyone was getting squeezed just from the bottom, from civil service and from employees who have decided just not to come to work. But this is the first I've heard of a hiring freeze, and I realize that you're now being squeezed from the top as well. I cannot imagine what it's like to be in your position and to have half your positions vacant and not being given the ability to fill them, and then have another quarter that are out on injury, and then having 22% of that staff left, and half of them, if not more, are not showing up to work. So you're basically operating on 10% of your given staff to keep everyone safe and to move the rehabilitative process forward. So I really hope that you're hearing the deep concern of this board loud and clear, and I hope you are willing to go to the CEO and to the 5 supervisors and let them know that we, the BSEC, are very concerned with what's happening on the staffing levels at Barry J and at Central. And we're very concerned that this current suitability is not going to be able to be sustained with the staff that you're given, and that Supervisor Barger or Hahn or Mitchell or Solis or Kuehl will immediately give you the resources that you need to be successful, and the staff you need, not just any staff, but staff that are trained and know how to communicate, as we know that is the main tool that's needed to keep these places safe. I hope you will deliver the message that we're really concerned.
Thanks, Mr. Burnick. I appreciate that, and I've been deeply concerned for quite some time now. And I'm definitely going to relay your message.
I see other hands raised on Guillermo.
I'll try to be brief, maybe less than 60 seconds, but then again, probably not. First, thank you, Chief Gonzalez, for engaging with us, and we certainly recognize you're a seasoned executive as anyone, and have been extraordinarily creative in trying to solve some of the biggest challenges in one of the most complex environments that any of us have been in. The problem here is, without being melodramatic, is that this has really gone to the heart of the credibility of the board and a challenge for the board, because this is now at least the second time in which, because of process, we've been told that we're voting on something that has already occurred. In other words, whether you were compliant on a particular time frame, and not whether there's any confidence that you could continue to be in compliance. That's the real issue here. And while we have all sorts of management questions, we can't help ourselves because we want to help. Really, none of that matters, because what the item before us is whether you were in compliance when the board representatives were there. Even if we feel uneasy, for example, in the past, we already expressed concern at putting the juveniles back at Central, because we had no mechanism to tell if after they were put back, you'd be able to be in compliance with the safety checks. And sure enough, that's exactly what occurred. We're not in compliance. And this time, maybe for a slightly worse reason, which was the possibility that inaccurate information was being provided with respect to safety checks. But none of that really matters, because we're not voting on the confidence level here. We're simply saying whether that was resolved in a certain time frame or not. And so really, more than being about LA County, I think it's us, the board, looking at each other and trying to figure out how we could fill the role that we think is necessary within the confines of the law. And I don't know if that today simply comes down to saying we could put resources to continue to reinspect at a higher rate, and that's all there is for today, or if there's a larger conversation to take place, perhaps at a next meeting.
Sheriff?
Chief, this is Shannon Dykes. In relation to the problems you're talking about, and really what we're seeing is obviously a labor action and inaction by the board. Have you tried to seek any legal remedies through county council? And also as a department head, and I just know this, if they aren't doing your will in terms of pursuing any of these legal actions, they should independently appoint somebody that will take care of your will. Have you explored any of those legal remedies?
County council's part of our meetings. They've been with us the whole time.
Have they tried to do a stay or anything with Superior Court in an effort to help you maybe intervene into the negotiations process or something along those lines and force people to work?
Not yet. They're still meeting and having their conversations during the negotiations process. But this one I think we did talk about, and at this point, they don't feel that they're quite there yet.
Okay, thank you.
Kirk Haynes. Oh,
Thank you, Chief Haynes. And thank you, Chief Gonzalez, for the work that's already been done, given the almost impossible environment and the impossible situation that we find, but you find yourself in LA County. As I've said before, you know, this is an LA County probation issue, but this is certainly a much bigger issue than one that you can resolve on your own for all the obvious reasons we've talked about today. That LA County and the leadership there, including the board, the CAO's office, really do need to support you so that staff and youth can be safe within your facility. If you have a hiring freeze that's been in place since January of 21, that's pretty incredible. I want to get clarification though, Chief. You did say that there was a hiring freeze. Is that countywide or is that in relation to that specific correctional officer classification?
Just the correctional officer classification, both juvenile halls and camps.
That's pretty incredible to me that given all the things that LA County probation has had to deal with, and I don't know what's going on in LA County where under this kind of pressure and the likelihood that LA County has already been found unsuitable for either be for Barry J or for Central, that the board has found non-compliance and there's still a hiring freeze, and notwithstanding whatever negotiations that are going on, it just baffles me. And again, I don't know all of the reasons why you would have a hiring freeze for a year and a half, given the vacancies that you're dealing with now. But this is a bigger issue than just LA County probation. This is a issue that I think, and I'm just stating the obvious, that the leadership in LA County need to really take a close look at what we can do there. But one of the other things I wanted to find out in regard to one of the recommendations was for there to be one staff per building performing safety checks. Given the staffing patterns, are you able to assure that that can continue to happen given all the holes that you have moving forward?
Chief, we've been talking about it internally, and we believe that with the deployed staff that we will be able to do that. We had volunteers come in during this time period to make sure that we had shored up the deficiencies in safety checks. We believe we can continue to get those volunteers and then with the deployed staff from the camps, be able to supplement that, because these are folks that definitely have the ability and the skill set to work in our facilities and that experience. So we will continue to do that and make every effort to assign somebody in each building moving forward.
And then this is just one last comment. Thank you, Chief Deputy Fletcher. It's the elephant in the room is you're attempting to operate 2 facilities there where you only have staff to operate 1. That's just my observation from the outside. So just an observation that I'll just make. Thank you, Chair.
thank you, Chief Mills.
First of all, thank you for all the work that LA County administration has done to try to get this headed the right direction. And we recognize the improvements that you've made. However, a question first, are adult probation officers helping coming over to the juvenile side to fill in some of the gaps? And if so, is that pretty pervasive, or is it just isolated where you're getting a few people?
The adult staff have been responding to our halls to assist us when we require them or request them to come in.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. I know that training is a little bit different. What's the ramp up time to recruit, hire, train, and deploy your probation officers into the jail system? This is not going to be a fix. It's going to take place in the next month or two.
It'll take some time for the background, say 3 to 4 months, plus the 11-week academy, and then get them ready to be in the facilities. You're talking maybe 6 months, more or less.
Great, thank you. And then just lastly, a couple of comments if I can. I think there's 2 integrity issues here that are really substantial, and the people of Los Angeles need to take note. First of all, is the integrity of people calling in sick. 30% of your workforce being off on long-term injury. I know of no other department that has that kind of vacancy rate. Many people are struggling with workman's comp. We understand that. And trying to control that part of the organization, it can be very stressful and difficult. However, the probation officers of Los Angeles County need to look in the mirror. And if they want to find a different job, if they can't do the one that they are currently getting paid for, we need people who are committed. Second one is an integrity check for the Board of Supervisors of Los Angeles. To have a hiring freeze in the midst of a crisis like this is tone deaf to the needs of the staff and the children who are incarcerated there. And I recognize that we can only do so much here as the board by statute. However, this to me becomes a political issue that the Board of Supervisors has to wrestle with. And having a hiring freeze in place to me is just unconscionable.
Thank you. Anyone else? Norma?
I just, well, first, thank you for being here today. And when I read through the paperwork, I was very excited to see that there had been some progress. So was very happy to see that. It was actually a relief to come today. But I just want to be, I'm not law enforcement, and so I just want to make sure I have this right. Are you saying that since January 2021, if one of your staff quits or gets fired, you're not able to replace that staff? I just want to make sure that that is correct. Is that true?
That's correct.
And then the next part, and I know Chair Penner, you spoke about that a little bit, but if there's a way that we could address the Board of Supervisors in LA County, I would be really happy to be part of that conversation. So thanks.
Thank you. Anybody? And I think what you're hearing here is frustration by the board, understanding that the recommendation today is that you be found suitable and we move forward. We have grave doubts about the sustainability of that. And I think that's really what you're hearing from all of us. I, for one, know that you are having young people return from DJJ or coming in, and it's a brand new population and your census will go up as a result of that. And are you telling us that you are not being able to hire as a result of this new obligation?
Right now, everything's on a freeze. Except we've been pushing to try to get that lifted or make special exceptions to the hiring freeze so that we can get the population managed better with our better staffing numbers.
So you currently now have around 80 young people that have come back from DJJ or are staying with you as a.
No.
How many?
In January, excuse me, July 1st of 2023, there's about 80 that were scheduled to come back to us.
And how many today?
Right now, we have about 52 right now.
And you haven't been able to hire to address that.
Right.
And I'm playing a bit of the devil's advocate right now, if I may. Your staffing as it stands now, is it for your current census or is it for the very high rate of young people you had in custody 2 years ago? So have they Have they reduced your staff based on your current census?
No.
No.
But the plan is not to fill all vacancies.
I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Chair Penner. This is Chief Deputy Adam Bettino. The plan would not be to fill all of the vacancies that we've listed. We just want to be able to fill vacancies commensurate with attrition. So in the last fiscal year, we've lost probably closer to now 150 staff. We've hired 31 through our Juvenile Correctional Officers Academy. And those 31 were conditional offers that were made prior to the hiring freeze. So at this point, you know, as we've sort of discussed, we have not even been able to keep up with attrition. And specific to the SYTF question, the 52 we have now are being supervised by existing staff. So those are staff who are in our juvenile halls. As shared, we've recently deployed some additional camp staff to assist, but that's all with the staff that we currently have, and we have not been able to fill any of those vacancies. But we would not fill all of the vacancies that we have because our caseloads don't necessarily justify it. But we do need to be mindful of exactly what you've referenced here. The 80 that are coming back to us from DJJ in about a year from now, plus this recent uptick that we've seen in our general juvenile hall population.
And finally, I think, I'm not sure I understand the answer that you gave Chief Mills when he asked you about redeploying deputy probation officers into the facility. Is your response that's a 6 months process to be able to utilize them in the facility, or were you referring to your initial hiring of a new employee?
Right, the 6 months I was referencing is to the hiring of the new employees.
So the redeployment of probation officers would be expedient in comparison. Is that true?
Yes.
That's actually ongoing, Chair Penner. So they have been deployed for months. It's a rotational basis. So it goes through juvenile services as well as adult services. Our special enforcement officers come in on occasion as needed to conduct searches when our staffing levels don't permit that in juvenile halls. But that has been an ongoing practice. And all of our DPOs, for the most part, started in one of our juvenile halls or camps. And so they have received that training and can just come over very readily, and they have cooperated greatly.
Okay, and I see Board Member Budnick has his hand up.
Yeah, what is the date that the 80 are going to be returned from DJJ?
On July 1st of 2023.
On a flow basis.
On what?
Flow basis.
Right. They'll come over on a flowing basis so that we don't receive all of the young men at the same time. But as the chief said, they have to be out of DJJ's facility by June 30th, 2023. And we will work with DJJ. We've had a couple of meetings with them already so that we can track out and plan the hearings that have to happen and the transportation in phases.
So is it safe to say that right now we don't even have the staffing for the 50 that are there, and you've been giving no additional staffing to handle the 50 that have already been sentenced into the SYTF, and we're already horrible point as it pertains to staffing, and then 80 more are going to come, and the 50 number might be double by then, might be 100 kids that are in there before the 80 even come. And if you guys aren't able and given the tools to solve this problem by then, you're going to have a real problem.
Right.
I mean, I feel like I just need to put an exclamation point on Chief Mills's comment about the integrity issues that are involved here. He made a comment that he doesn't think he's seen any department with vacancy and no-show numbers like this. Does that ring true to you?
Yes.
So I know when I walk around the prisons, Secretary Allison's facilities, it's nothing like that. in your experience, it's chief in other counties, nothing like that?
No, not anywhere.
So there's something very specific about LA, where people just don't show up to work. I mean, the question are these professional peace officers? Because from the professional peace officers I talked to in Secretary Allison's department, they would never consistently not come to work. And I know the probation officers that I see every week at Barry J. Nydorf Juvenile Hall. And not only do they not call out, but they're being held doubles their family plans have to change every day because they never can go home to their family because their peers are calling out. That's not a professional peace officer. So I really don't know what to say to that piece of it, other than it's like code red. And I don't even think we've seen the worst of it yet in terms of injuries, deaths, et cetera, because of a complete lack of staffing and professionalism and integrity, as Chief Mills said. But the lack of integrity at the CEO level, the fact that you have this brand new program of youth coming from the state, youth being sentenced that normally would have gone to the state now being kept under you, and you were given no additional staff, none, to handle this population. That's just shocking. It's irresponsible. It's insane. So I just wanted to put an exclamation point on what Chief Mills said. I think he was right on.
Okay, Chief Vernon.
Yeah, Chief Gonzalez, thank you so much. And honestly, what you've been able to accomplish is incredible considering what you're working up against. Was there any indication from your board as to their decision, be it your board or your CEO, to put that hiring freeze in place only for your JCO classification? And that's not a countywide freeze. So was there any explanation at all given, particularly looking at the new population that 823 is bringing to all of us and our responsibilities that will continue to increase?
I'm trying to understand, this is Robert Smythe again, trying to understand the question. There definitely was an effort to just put the freeze on our juvenile institutions, not countywide. And the purpose of that was to determine what they call right sizing, which means determining how many staff do we actually need to run a facility based on the number of youth in that facility and the other needs of that facility, such as blind spots, et cetera, et cetera. That study is still ongoing. So the next part, I think, of what your question would be is what happens next? And what happens next is we have experienced attrition, as Mr. Bettino has explained recently, and that attrition was not, of course, had not taken place yet at the time the freeze was put in place. So we are attempting to address the attrition that has occurred to help us keep pace with the staffing needs of the facility. That does not include the needs that Mr. Butnick highlighted with the SYTF population that will join us within the next less than a year.
Sadly, at this point, that study is for naught, considering all the changes. And if they haven't completed a study in 18 months for what you needed 18 months ago, it's very concerning. And I echo a lot of the other comments about the leadership not in the probation department in LA County in general.
The study actually started early October, but they're still working on it.
For clarification, October of 21, when they put the freeze in January of 21?
The study started October 2021, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm looking at the board. Yes. Secretary Allison.
Sorry, one more question. Based on your total pop and your two facilities that you have available to you, would you have the ability to consolidate that pop into one facility?
That's what happened when we moved Central to Barry J to try to make the repairs at Central. The issue that we have in the county is that some are over an hour away, and we can't. And the other thing we're trying to do is save families, want to make sure families have access to their children. We're looking at a feasibility study right now to see if there's a way, if we can consolidate those two and have a hub where families can come and meet with their children or their young person. So we're taking a look at that right now through a feasibility study.
Thank you. All right. Good discussion. I feel obligated to bring us back to the recommendation at hand. And as I do that, I think it was an invaluable conversation. I think there is other means and efforts that this board can put into place. I can't tell you exactly what they are at this juncture, but I can assure you that we've heard what is being said here today, and we'll do our best to make this board heard and allow for the concerns of this board to go forward. With that said, we now go to the public. And before we begin, Adam, can you tell me how many comments do we have?
We have 7 commenters.
Okay, 7 comments. And just for the record, we will close the queue on comments after the first speaker has finished. So I want that on the record. I will hold you to the 2 minutes. There is a great deal of additional work to be done. And I'd open the queue now, Adam, and then close it after the first speaker.
The first one will be Manuel Molina.
Thank you. Manuel?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
First of all, I want to remain anonymous just because of the Department of Retaliation clause. One thing I would emphasize is I am a 16-year-old vet. I've worked in
Manuel,
all the.
before you go on, we've stated your name on the record.
Well, then you go ahead and leave it then.
Okay.
One thing I want to emphasize first is that the reason we are not in compliance is because our officers' lives are in danger every single day. So they refuse not to come to work just because they fear for their safety, along with the wards that are incarcerated right now. We've had numerous staff being assaulted and injured by youth, in which sometimes me being a frontline officer, we feel helpless because there's no wrongdoing for punishment anymore. We can write all the reports we want against the wards and nothing comes of it. Another thing would be the type of program that the department has towards these wards. There's nothing interesting that a ward in custody has any interest in. So we need to create programs in which these kids are attracted to. Another thing is that our staff, some of them aren't really sick, but they're calling out, just like I said before, just because they're in fear of life. I myself, I'm in a position of giving my 2-week notice. I understand that the chief said that there's no hires right now at the time, but Central right now has had 6 new hires in the last 2 weeks. I know that once I leave, he stated that no one else is going to take my position. And it saddens me because I've been in the department so long that now it's turned into something different where no one wants to come to work no more just because their life is in danger at all times. And no one's doing anything about it because they're not in the front line of duty. Another thing is that I've been working 3 to 4 times a week as overtime, and I'm sick and tired of it. I don't come home to my family. I'm burned out. I almost got into a car accident last week, and no one's gonna care. I mean, I have a family to feed, right? But it doesn't matter because I'm forced to work overtime, and no one really cares about my well-being. Another thing too is that you deploy officers from the field that are not trained. I haven't been trained in 3 years, and I remain working.
That was the 2-minute timer, so I need you to close down now.
Well, in closing, I only hope that people with position of power are also punished as people with lower positions. So if you fire people for lying, make sure that also applies to people of higher power, because it's not fair, and you guys are misleading the people what's really going on. Talk to the regular line staff. You talk to them in person to make sure that you're getting accurate information from these people.
Okay, thank you very much.
Next, we have Melinda.
It's Melinda Kakani. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, this is Melinda Kakani with Children's Defense Fund California and the Los Angeles Youth Uprising Coalition. It just feels like we've been here before, and somehow we've all accepted that we're going to be back here again. Sometimes it's room confinement, safety checks, it's staff shortages, it's documentation that doesn't align with video footage. It's a constant moving target. And while we seem to have accepted this cycling in and out of suitability and shifting violations, we seem to have forgotten who is responsible for these violations. It's probation. They have a $410 million budget for 400 young people, and they still can't get it right. Chief Gonzalez's report was correct, nothing short of alarming. Record callouts, record numbers of folks on leave, no cameras to fact check the questionable behavior of staff. And I'm referencing why we landed here this time and why the OIG's recent report creates the same sentiment. Regularly canceled visitation, regularly canceled programming, which wasn't addressed but feels like a logical conclusion when you have half of your staff choosing not to show up. And yet their union is holding these young people hostage in the compound. Probation is not the victim here. They've single-handedly created this crisis. The board has determined this institution is fundamentally flawed, beyond repair, beyond reform. There's this thing called Youth Justice Reimagined. It's worth familiarizing yourself with this report. The answer is not lifting the hiring freeze. We don't need more employees who don't have the ability, the training, the tools to actually support the rehabilitation of these young people. And moreover, they're not going to be hired for another year, so that doesn't solve the immediate need. Probation technically has 437 staff for 350 young people. More staff doesn't change this lack of accountability. This is a union issue, not a hiring issue. The answer needs to be a process that creates accountability, not at the expense of our young people. The best message you could send to the board and probation is by shutting this facility down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have C. Lommel.
Hello?
Is he C. Lamel? We'll move on to Maria Molina.
Hello.
Hello?
C. Lamel, Cookie Lamel. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, yes. My name is Cookie Lamel. I am with the union Local 685. There are a couple of things that I'd like to point out that I think are not being factored into this. I absolutely want to say that our chief and Ms. Fletcher have been outstanding, considering what they don't have to work with. But one of the main reasons that a lot of these people are calling out, and I actually should say there are two reasons. One is there are so many confrontations at these facilities. Just over the weekend, there was a man who was taken to the hospital. It has been determined that his hip is broken. Surgery was performed. This is what the union has been dealing with, the people who are constantly injured with the kids, and they're without any tools to deal with that. And secondly, once you are injured and you're out, then this is a very important one. Sedgwick, which is our insurance company, they take forever in order for you to book any surgeries or issues that you have, which it makes it much longer before they can get back to work. And that is a major issue that needs to be dealt with. And I would imagine on the CEO's level or the Board of Supervisors level, we're getting no support from that. And that, I think, is two very important factors to enter into what one can possibly do to deal with this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Maria Molina.
Hola, necesito ayuda para que alguien pueda traducir lo que tengo que decir, por favor.
I don't, yeah, unfortunately, we don't have a,
Bien, aún así voy a decir lo que tengo que decir porque sé que esto se está grabando y quiero que quede un antecedente.
hold on just a moment, please.
Maria, can you hold on one second?
Vamos a buscar alguien que puede ayudar. Vamos a casi 5 o 10 minutos. Vamos a tratar a ayudarle. ¿Ok? Does anyone have enough Spanish. I mean, I can fake it. I pretty
You
much
did pretty
understood,
good.
but go Guillermo. Let's wait. I understood everything she said, so I can fake it
Okay,
pretty
let's
well.
go to the next speaker and come back.
Okay. And we have Aditi.
Good afternoon, Aditi Sharakar, Children's Defense Fund, California. I want to focus in a little bit on what the root cause might be for all these call outs, right? Like we're talking about lifting the hiring freeze and hiring more probation officers into a department that has so much dysfunction that its own employees feel that they're being abused in their workplace. So if you look at what they said about Camp Kilpatrick versus the halls, the employees at Kilpatrick are showing up. Why? Probably because it is a better location than the halls. The halls have so much rampant abuse happening that it affects not just the youth, but also the staff. And I don't see how just sending more bodies into an abusive structure is going to solve the problem. You're just going to have the new probation officers calling out for the same reasons the current ones do now. Again, as Millie said earlier, the best way to really send a message here is to shut down these halls. It's not just for the safety of the youth, it's clearly also for the safety of the staff. And I don't see how just throwing more bodies into this machine that can't even figure out how to push labor to move kids into a better, more rehabilitative environment is going to handle an influx of more officers. It just doesn't seem like a logical solution in this instance. It's clear to me that the union and labor negotiations are what is stalling progress, and it has nothing to do with the hiring freeze. It has nothing to do with just throwing more bodies at this problem. What the board really needs to do is focus on these union issues and advocate for them to get over themselves and actually make progress. How many times do we have to hear LA come into meetings and talk about how their union and labor negotiations are the reason for stalling any kind of progress at all? It's absolutely absurd. And I don't think that rewarding them with a greater size department makes any sense. Again, the LA Board of Supervisors has already voted to phase out juvenile probation in the next several years. That means this is a department that will not exist in several years from now because of a motion passed by the Board of
I have to ask you
Supervisors.
to close in on your ending, please.
So in conclusion, I would say hiring more officers is just not the solution at all. And you should find Central unsuitable today to send a message. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Nicole Brown.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole Brown with the Urban Peace Institute in the Los Angeles Youth Uprising Coalition. I just wanted to share some numbers and some context about the hiring freeze. One of the reasons why I believe the Board of Supervisors put a hiring freeze on juvenile institution services budget units specifically is because there has been an 86% decrease in the number of incarcerated youth in the last 12 years in Los Angeles. And that the staffing numbers have essentially stayed the same. In that time, 7 camps, I think, were closed around that same time. So in asking over and over again, why does a department have over $400 million to run facilities with only 400 young people? Nobody really had a good answer for that. And I believe that part of that 80%, there has never been a decrease in staff when you have an 86% decrease in the population of young people. This is before DJJ, but I wanted to provide that context. I also want to note that from 2018 to 2021, there has been a 55% decrease in the number of youth on active supervision. So if you look at actually the positions filled last year, 2021, for DPOs on juvenile field services, there were 332 officers to supervise 2,200 young people. That's only about 6.8 young person per field officer. So when you see camps that are largely empty, when you see field supervisors that are trained in juvenile that have tiny caseloads, it's hard to understand why can't you just use and reuse the staff, reassign the staff that you already have. There are over 2,000 people working in the juvenile institution services. So these are just some numbers I think are important to keep in mind for when you look at this. The issue is a management issue. The issue is many issues, and my heart goes out for everybody that's experiencing such chaos, but I just wanted to provide that context. The auditor controller in LA County found that in 2019, 20% of the juvenile institution services staff had been on leave for over 6 months. So this is a long-standing issue.
Right.
This is why
I
the board
apologize.
has decided.
I'm gonna have to ask you to wind up then.
Thank you. Yeah, in conclusion, thank you very much. In conclusion, these issues and the untractability of solving these issues for so many years is why the board is moving to phase out juvenile probation and to move towards youth justice reimagined. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have James Martinez.
Good afternoon, board. My name is James Martinez. I'm a policy and programs assistant with MILPA. I just really wanted to uplift the concerns that's already been uplifted by the board. I find it very concerning the fact that reports were basically fraudulently fabricated saying that safety checks were being administered when in all reality they weren't, right? And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that's perjury. So I would like to ask, is that something that is condoned and enabled at the LA Probation Department, which is to allow its workers to fabricate and falsify documents when saying that they're doing something that they're not, which can jeopardize the safety and well-being of those that are housed in the facility, as well as those that are facilitating the work in the facility. This is something that I didn't hear come up, so it's something that I would really like to kind of get input on. Is this something that's enabled? Is this something that's allowed? Is this something that's encouraged for workers to do? And if so, this is an unethical matter. And this is something that's very concerning, because when you're put in a position where you're taking a sworn oath to uphold the law, but yet you're undermining it and using a form of lawlessness to basically manipulate variables, basically saying we're doing this when in all reality, nothing is being done. And if so, what is BSCC doing to ensure that there are ramifications if this continues to happen? I believe BSCC has a responsibility to ensure that these facilities are in compliance. And when those that they're working with are committing perjury, what is being done on this board to ensure that they're not allowing these facilities to fabricate documents when nothing is being done? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Next, we have Damon Aiello. Damon Aiello. We'll move on to.
Hi, I'm here.
Oh,
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hi, thank you. My name is Damon Ayala. I'm a social work intern at USC with Dignity and Power Now and LA Youth Uprising. I just wanted to point out that the BSCC today heard advocates, line staff, and even their own union say that in some way that the system is broken. And I don't know why this is even on the table, and why we're even talking about it right now. On top of that, it's been mentioned that the number of incarcerated youth has gone down, and now we're proposing to increase the staffing. So I don't see how throwing more money at a broken system and more staff at a broken system is the answer. So I'd like you all to really think about that and put those three pieces together. It's coming from different angles that they're saying something's wrong with the system. So we're gonna increase the system. That doesn't really make much sense to me. But anyway, my 40 years ago, I was in the juvenile justice system in LA County in the halls and camps. And really not much has changed. I'm back in it, 40 years later as an advocate, and I see a lot of the same things. And, I think it's time to shrink the footprint, not expand it, and to expand restorative justice and healing justice, and think more in line with youth justice reimagined. Thank you.
Thank you.
next we have Youth Justice Coalition.
Yeah, how you doing? My name is Jacob Jackson. I'm with the Youth Justice Coalition and LA County Youth Commission, represent Second District. Also would like to say that the Youth Commission has sent out a report about Barry J, in I believe in May too. And just to say, from what it says they had a staff short at that time. due to COVID-19, lack of adequate schooling, educational opportunities, lack of engaging program, limited visitation opportunities, inadequate health services, and rundown facilities for the men's bathroom, and inadequate food to fit their height and weight. Um, just like my folks said before, you feel me? I don't believe in these halls, and I don't believe that what you call it, throwing more funding at staff is gonna help anything. You feel me? If anything, I would like to give you a description of where I live. You feel me? I live in a garage. You feel me? I'm sitting in a chair. You know, that's where I sleep at. Due to, for me, I'm on the my mom is facing housing problems and stuff like that. But there's people that are facing tougher situations and they have limited opportunities, limited things to do. You feel me? And they rather, you know, it's hard to make money out here. You feel me? You go out here, go apply for a job, they ain't gonna give it to you. So you feel me? We want to make more opportunities. You just reimagine. I also work with the BI, the Burns Institute. I'm also a consultant with them, and I work with on You Just Reimagine, and I host a space called How Do You Just Reimagine, centering young people voices and their trauma and experiences. You know, trying to let them know what YJR is coming to, what it's about. And definitely, you know, having this space, having YJR is going to be a new space of healing, transforming to justice, what you call it, reentry services for folks that have been broken inside. How do we have what you call it, funding to support youth that have been, you know, traumatized or raped or, you know, been affected inside? You feel me? But we don't have funding to fund youth development. You feel me? Like, I don't understand that youth development divergent, but healing is the best way to do it. And I'm saying YJR is the best way to go. If folks can see that as a key, we should not invest in probation and close the halls. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Mel Bailey.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair, Board, and all those in attendance. Thank you for the time and space. My name is Mel Bailey. I come to you today. I am a community advocate for City of Compton Foster District 2. And we were talking earlier, it was mentioned earlier about as far as accountability. And while I agree with that and I understand that conversation, I would ask that we consider expanding that conversation just a tad bit. The question, $1 million question is why the staff shortages? And it's come to understand that the courts have not been in these conversations. We know that everybody feels safe when there's structure, when there's accountability, and we all need structure. And so I strongly believe that if we have the courts involved in these conversations and, you know, there's some level of accountability, that level of staff shortage will dissipate significantly. Second point is for those of us that live on this side of the 110, closing down Central would be difficult, especially for the kids who I mentor and try to fellowship with. If we are to help these kids and help our families, going out to Sylmar could create a financial hardship for a lot of parents who want to have that. And I just ask that bring the family reunification aspects of this entire equation intact. Thank you for the time. You guys have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Okay. Next we have Alida.
Hi, good afternoon, all. I'm Alida Ledesma with Arts for Healing and Justice Network. I'm here to support what my fellow advocates have been saying. The county has committed to a Care First Jails Last model, but so far it's only been in words and not in actions. We should be shrinking the department instead of trying to lift the hiring freeze and growing the department. That is not the solution that is needed. We know that the union is acting out in bad faith, with almost 50% of staff calling out of the halls. We know this as well, being a provider that is working currently in the camps and in the halls. The union has been in either informal or formal contract negotiations since last September. essentially prioritizing their budget over the lives of 50 young people. We need to start thinking about the youth and what is best for them instead of making this another political move. So I'm urging you to please not lift the hiring freeze, which is not going to solve the problems like my fellow advocates have mentioned. All we will see is continuing to see staff calling out because that is not the solution to the problem that we are facing. Thank you.
Thank you.
And our final commenter for this item is Nancy Juarez.
Before you start, Nancy, we want to circle back to Maria and try to.
No problem.
Yes.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Okay. Nancy Juarez, Center on Juvenile and Criminal Justice. We strongly urge the BSCC to find Central Hall unsuitable today. There has been so much focus on staffing, but let me remind the board of the issue at hand. LA probation officers were caught lying about essential job functions with supervisors involved. And before that, they moved all of the youth to Barry J to literally avoid an inspection that LA knew they would fail. How can we allow young people to remain in this facility? You're right, Chief Gonzalez, the youth do deserve better. If your staff feels emboldened to blatantly lie about their actions while under the microscope of oversight bodies, imagine what happens when there's no oversight. This is not the only instance of Central Hall staff lying on the job. The Office of Inspector General found that in the first half of 2022, probation reports on use of force did not match video footage. One example involved a PO claiming a young person approached him with fist clenched to justify use of force, but the video directly contradicted this. The same way the video footage directly contradicted the supposed safety checks that were occurring. The BSCC's own investigators have said despite technical compliance, they remain concerned about ongoing issues at Central Hall. This is month 19 of LA trying to be in full compliance. We don't give this many chances to young people. Why are we giving this many chances to a $410 million institution? The BSCC should remain extremely concerned with the safety and dignity of youth housed under their care. We urge you to find Central unsuitable today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And finally, we'll call Maria Molina again. Maria?
Gracias. Estoy muy preocupada por la situación de los niños que están en la unidad del centro. Hace unos días.
Hold on.
Momentito, señora, voy a traducir después de cada small part of your speech. I remain very concerned about the safety of the youth who are housed in these facilities. Señora?
Sí, mi hijo está en la unidad del centro y hablé con él hace unos días.
Okay,
Él está,
momentito. My son is in Central. I speak with him every few days. Señora?
él está asustado porque ha visto cómo los oficiales han violentado a otros chicos de los que están ahí.
He's very concerned because the officers who work there are violent toward other young people.
Y se supone que el centro es para que ellos puedan reformarse, pero me dice que pasa todo el día viendo televisión.
Okay, it's supposed to be that they're at Central to get rehabilitation and reform, but they're only watching TV all day long. Señora?
Y no hay suficientes oficiales que pongan orden ahí adentro.
And there are not enough officials to provide order, I believe is what she said. Señora?
Temo por la integridad de mi hijo ahí adentro.
I'm very concerned about my son's safety inside. Señora?
Es todo. Quiero que hagan algo, que pongan orden. Los chicos están ahí para mejorar sus vidas, no para que salgan de ahí lastimados o muertos.
I'm very concerned. Someone should be there restoring order, not keeping the kids in danger of death.
Es todo. Gracias.
Gracias, señora.
Thank you.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam. We're back now to the board. Questions, comments?
I did have a question of clarification based on one of the public comments. they talked about you have a total of 2,000 staff for both the juvenile halls and juvenile probation. I guess my question is, have you factored, when you look at your total population versus your staffing, you obviously, if you've reduced your population by 86%, you don't need that total staffing allocation. So I understand that. I guess my question would be, have you done an analysis of crosswalking based on your pop, what your staffing allocations need to be? And I realize you're doing a bigger analysis, but that to me could be day-to-day operations to know what your needs are. I guess we've really hyper-focused on your vacancy rate. And if that's not the case, maybe, we misunderstood something along the way. So maybe you could provide some clarification on that for me.
This is Robert Smythe, here sitting next to the chief. I'm off camera a bit. We do have about 2,100 staff in the juvenile institution's budget unit. That's what you're referring to. That includes both the juvenile halls and camps and transportation and camp community transition program. And that's sworn staff and non-sworn staff, which are people like clerical staff and others who work in the facility to support the operations, both in the facilities and also outside of the facilities. So that's everyone. The CEO study that I mentioned that began in October is what you just described, or primarily what you described, which is they are looking at what they call right sizing, which is determining how many staff are needed for each facility. And also the standards have changed with the supervision of youth for things such as the prison rape initiative, which did not exist at the time some of the staffing was originally prescribed. One other thing that keeps being missed is Labor Code 4850, which was changed back around 2003 or 4, which caused a large increase year over year in the number of staff out on workers' comp, and provides, and it added probation back in the early 2001, 2, 3, around there. It existed long before that, but probation was added to it. That allowed staff to stay off work, assuming they continue to be injured, for a year with full pay, tax-free. So those things provide some influence on staff's being off work. In addition, the staff can purchase an insurance plan, and I won't name names of those insurance plans, that does salary continuation for them on top of Labor Code 4850. So again, we have to look at incentives as part of any discussion, any comprehensive discussion about how staffing works.
Thank you. Anything further from the board? As we get back to the business of the recommendation before the board, I really would like to make sure everybody narrows their consideration of exactly what Allison is asking the board to do today. And I do that not because the discussion we have hasn't been meaningful and certainly persuasive in many ways. We are not here to take action on other items except for the recommendation before us. Not to say that we will not have a great deal of conversation and consideration of the many things we've heard here today. Any other questions or comments before I ask for a motion or a second? Seeing none, may I have a motion?
Madam Chair,
Thank you.
I move for staff's recommendation.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion and a second. Adam, please pull the board.
Chair Penner,
Aye.
Ms. Allison,
Aye.
Mr. Villarosa,
Aye.
Mr. Dykes,
Aye.
Ms. Chavez, Ms. Chavez?
Yes.
Yes.
Was that an aye, Supervisor Chavez? We couldn't
Yes,
hear you.
There you
Okay.
go. Aye.
Mr. Haynes,
Aye.
Ms. Vernon,
Aye.
Ms. Guard recused, Mr. Mills,
Abstain.
Okay.
Mr. Budnick,
Aye.
Mr. Garcia recused, Ms. Kumpion.
Aye.
Madam Chair, the motion carries for agenda item B.
Thank you all, and thank you all for your hard work and thoughtfulness on that item. Moving now to We'd like to get a lot of people back in the room. Let's do that. You may take a quick break as needed. Anybody who wants to, please do it as you see fit. Thank you. Okay, Damien, good to see you and thank you for your patience. And if you wouldn't mind, take item C and run with it.
Before we begin with that item, Madam Chair, we want to
Yes.
deal with our recusals on this item.
Okay.
And on this item, I think we will ask Mr. Butnick and Ms. Kumpion to recuse.
Can I hold just a moment? Is that to recuse for all the items or just?
This is just for C. C, we're actually making awards.
You
And
should have
then,
said C right away before we lost Budnick, but I'm sure he can still hang in there for us. Okay. Item C.
and then Supervisor Chavez, and to state there's funding that will be going to, recommended for funding for Santa Clara County. She'll be being recused. And then I did want to mention Board Member Guard, Judge Guard, is electing to recuse herself. Although she chaired the Executive Steering Committee for Prop 47, as it turned out, one of the applicants ended up being 2 applications from Yolo County came in, and there's a chance that she might end up sitting on assignment for programs that are then going to be funded through Yolo County. No funding going to the court. But just as a matter of prudence, she's electing to recuse herself from the discussion and the making the awards at this time.
Okay, thank you. Damon.
Wonderful, thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Damian Renault, Field Representative for Prop 47. Today, I'm presenting Agenda Item C, requesting approval for the Proposition 47 funding recommendations. We are requesting board approval to fund the proposals as rated and recommended by the rater panel. The RFP funding recommendations and program summaries are included in the board item attachments. The grant agreement covers September 1st, 2022 through June 1st, 2026, and approximately 124 million is recommended for funding. Grant funding will begin in September. Might be losing me here. A little closer. All right. I'm stature is short here. With approval, the grant funding will begin in September and a grantee orientation to follow in October. I would like to thank Judge Janet Guard, who is not with us right now, for her leadership and support, the rater panel for their diligence, and Stacy Riley in the development of the rater training. As far as recommendations, on behalf of the Prop 47 rater panel, staff recommends the following. The board approve the funding recommendations as received by the rater panel. This concludes my report. Any questions?
No, thank you. Any questions? I'm sorry, apologize. Any remarks, questions from the board?
I just have one question. I think it was the large scope category. There were 3 that were not funded. Did they not meet the requirements? Is that why they weren't funded? And do they still have an opportunity? And the reason I'm asking is obviously there's still money in the fund.
Correct. There was a minimum threshold of 65% of the maximum number of points that could be gained that unfortunately a handful did not make.
Do they have an opportunity to make those corrections, or is this a one shot, one kill type of deal?
They don't have opportunity at this point to make the corrections, and later on, the money goes back into the pot for the next cohort.
Got it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Anything else from board members? Any questions or comment? Adam?
I do not have public comment for this agenda item.
Thank you. Looking for a motion and a second from the board.
Move to approve as presented.
All right.
Second.
A motion and a second. Adam?
Chair Penner,
Aye.
Ms. Allison,
Aye.
Mr. Vera Rosa,
Aye.
Mr. Dykes,
Aye.
Ms. Chavez recused, Ms. Guard recused, Mr. Budnick and Ms. Kumpion recused, Mr. Haynes.
Aye.
Ms. Vernon,
Aye.
Mr. Mills,
Aye.
Mr. Garcia.
Aye.
Madam Chair, the motion carries for agenda item C.
Thank you. And can invite the recused members. Thank you, Damian. And invite the recused members back.
So on this next series of items, Madam Chair, for E, F, G, and H, what we plan to do, I think at this point, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ricardo, we're going to do just a very, very high level overview and summary of these new grant programs that have been assigned to us, just so board members can at least hear what the items are, and then we will take them, we will vote on them, and then do recusals for each individual grant program to make sure people who need to recuse or would elect to recuse do so at that time.
Okay. Just a little point of interest by me. You said everything, but you did not say item I. Is item I included in that?
Item I is a separate item.
Okay. So we are going to now hear a whole lot from Ricardo, and we're going to do that and then individually vote on them after we hear all of the presentations from all the items.
That's
all
correct,
right.
Madam Chair.
And welcoming Ricardo for,
Madam Chair, I believe Ms. Chavez has a question before we start.
okay, we can't see you, Ms. Chavez, so I wasn't ignoring you purposely.
No problem. I just wanted to make sure that, I'm sorry that I have so many recusals on my page, and I got a little garbled. Am I recused from this item as well?
So
Sorry, Aaron, go ahead.
we were going to do a broad overview of all the items first, and then deal with the recusals. So just a broad summary. You won't be participating in any discussion with the item. At the same time, you are recused from almost all of them. So I would look to you if you want to sit through that part of the presentation.
Yeah, I'm going to just because of the risk of, damaging any process, I'll just recuse and I'll be off camera. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon again, Madam Chair and board members, Deputy Director Ricardo Goodrich with the Corrections Planning and Grants Programs Division. To make the most efficient use of the board's time on this afternoon, I am presenting agenda items E, F, G, and H together. Each of these items initiates an executive steering committee grant development process for new grants that are included in this year's budget. I will briefly describe each new grant program and conclude with a request to establish 4 different executive steering committees. As already been mentioned, I will request a separate motion and a vote at the end. The State Budget Act of 2022 established 5 new grant programs for the board to administer. The first program I will describe is the Organized Retail Theft Grant Program. Please see agenda item E for reference. The Organized Retail Theft Grant Program provides funding to support local law enforcement agencies in preventing and responding to organized retail theft, motor vehicle or motor vehicle accessory theft, or cargo theft. The grant shall be available competitively for city police, county sheriff's departments, and probation departments. We anticipate that a total of $255 million or $85 million per year will be available in each of the next 3 fiscal years to implement the grant program, subject to future appropriations. The Organized Retail Theft Vertical Prosecution Grant Program provides funding for district attorneys to address increased levels of retail theft property crimes by using a vertical prosecution model. The BSEC anticipates a total of $30 million or $10 million per year will be available in each of the next 3 fiscal years to implement the vertical prosecution grant program. Please note that staff is proposing 1 executive steering committee to oversee the request for proposal development process for the organized retail theft and the Organized Retail Theft Vertical Prosecution Grant Program, as they are closely tied together. We anticipate 2 distinct RFPs, both to be developed by the same executive steering committee. Please reference agenda item F for the next grant program. The Local Law Enforcement Gun Buyback Grant Program provides funding to support gun buyback programs. The grant shall be available competitively to local law enforcement agencies. A total of $25 million in one-time funding is available to implement this program. please reference agenda item G for the next grant program. The Missing and Murdered Indigenous People Grant Program provides funding to support efforts to identify, collect case-level data, publicize, investigate, and solve cases involving missing and murdered Indigenous people. The grant shall be available competitively to federally recognized Indian tribes in California. The BSCC anticipates a total of 12 million or 4 million per year will be available in each of the next 3 fiscal years to implement the grant program. And finally, please reference agenda item H for the next grant program. The Mobile Probation Service Centers Grant Program provides funding to county probation departments to purchase vehicles, equipment, telecommunications, and other technology needed to operate mobile probation service centers to assist people on probation. The grant shall be available competitively to probation departments. A total of 20 million in one-time funding is available to implement the grant program. As I mentioned earlier, we will need a separate motion for each executive steering committee. I will indicate the staff's recommendation one at a time and take questions from the board as well as public comment on each of the executive steering committees. A motion and a vote will be required on each ESC. Are there any questions from the board on the process or any of the details at this time? Okay, Madam Chair, staff recommends that the board, I'll start with the Organized Retail Theft and Vertical Prosecution Grant
Well,
Program. If
let's
council wants to do recusals.
Yeah, before we even entertain a motion, Ricardo, we should ask for the recusals on each of these. So before we take up formally the item, do we have anyone who would like to recuse from item E, which is going to be the Organized Retail Theft and Vertical Prosecution Grant Program?
Aaron, this is Shannon Dykes. Based on your earlier advisal, I'm going to recuse myself and step out of the room.
Okay, thank you.
As well as Andy Mills on both E and F.
That sounds appropriate. Thank you.
And if you two wouldn't mind remaining close.
And this is Kelly Vernon. I'll recuse on E and H.
And then Aaron, this is Chief Haynes. I'm going to recuse myself on E, F, H.
Thank you.
Holding on to the table. Okay. Ooh, E. Okay. Item E. Let the record reflect a bunch of people left on this item.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Do we want to do public comment?
There are
Yes,
6 board members in the room, Aaron.
Yes.
that is sufficient.
Okay, and I include Janet
Majority
in the room.
majority of those present and voting.
Thank you.
Are we going to do public comment on each
Yes, we have to
item?
do public comment on each
Okay,
one.
so
Yeah.
hold the phone here.
I have one public comment for agenda item E,
Okay, thank you.
and that would be Travis Martinez.
Okay.
Hi,
Travis?
can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, great, thanks. My name is Travis Martinez. I'm the Deputy Chief of Police for Redlands PD. On behalf of law enforcement, thank you for taking the time to consider programs that can address organized retail crime. As we all know, ORC has been a major problem in most California cities. As a 7-year police executive who has also presented at numerous state, national, and international conferences across the country on how law enforcement agencies can utilize technology to address crime trends, I can personally attest that the key to addressing ORC is through technology. Redlands is home to a major shopping complex whose stores are prone to being hit by ORC crews. For several years, we have taken a very proactive approach to addressing crime trends by utilizing specialized GPS trackers and automated license plate reader technology. White papers discussing our success with these technological deployments have been published in several periodicals, including Police Chief Magazine, the FBI Law Enforcement Bulletin, the National Police Foundation, and the Cops Office. The results speak volumes. RPD has found a proven and affordable way to put law enforcement in direct contact with those who are intent on committing robberies, burglaries, and thefts. When the problem of ORC reached Redlands, we once again turned towards technology. I would enjoy talking about the details of a particular case, but time does not allow. To sum it up though, RPD partnered with a well-known beauty supply store and arranged to install GPS tracking technology and high-end perfumes. In addition, we worked with the property management company of the major shopping center to ensure ALPR cameras whose technology addresses the concerns of privacy advocates were installed at the egress points of the center. In the span of a month, both technologies were used to apprehend 2 ORC crews that had hit numerous stores. The GPS technology enabled law enforcement to make an apprehension, and the ALPR technology helped us connect several cases to the 2 crews. Investigations like this play out on a weekly basis across the country, where police departments work in partnership with our private sector counterparts to install technology that can provide authorities with the tools needed to arrest ORC offenders. The beauty supply store that was in Redlands can be a prime example of how this type of technology works. As a result of utilizing the technology that I just spoke about, just in California since 2016, authorities have arrested 134 suspects in 58 different incidents that occurred at that store, or that chain. These cases resulted in an arrest rate of 81% and a recovery rate of 99%. Technology is definitely the key to addressing the ORC problem.
Excuse me. Your 2 minutes is run, so you got to close down here.
Okay, thank you very much. Hey, it provides a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week security protection. Thank you for your time, and I welcome
Thank
any
you.
questions.
Thank you.
And that's it for public comment.
Okay, looking for a motion and a second on item E.
Kathleen Allison, motion to approve.
I second.
A motion and a second. Thank you. Adam?
Chair Penner,
Aye.
Miss Allison,
Aye.
Mr. Vera Rosa,
Aye.
Miss Guard,
Aye.
Mr. Budnick. Mr. Budnick,
I don't believe Scott's back.
Okay.
Miss Kumpion,
Aye.
Mr. Garcia.
Aye.
6. We have 6. And Mr. Dykes, Miss Chavez, Miss Haynes, Miss Vernon.
Oh, Scott's
Mr.
back.
Oh, Mr. Budnick.
I'm back. Sorry, no one called me back from the last one. Which item is this?
This is
Item E, organized retail theft prevention and vertical prosecution.
I read this. Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
perfect. So, Madam Chair, the motion carries for agenda item E.
Thank you. On now to item F.
Did we establish who the chair is of that committee, Madam Chair?
We did not. We are recommending Janet Guard. Thank you.
Janet Guard.
Couldn't remember. I apologize, Janet. Thank you for agreeing to do that.
You're welcome. May I make a comment? So
Yes.
I was recused on item C, but Katie sent me a note and said that the recommendations were approved. And I just want to say it was a delight working with that ASC and the dream team from BSCC, Ricardo and Damian and Stacy and Veronica. And the reason I was willing to do this retail crime in part was because it was such a great experience working with all of them. So I just want to thank them and be sure they're recognized.
Oh, I appreciate that. And even more so, I appreciate your willingness to go again. We promised to give you a dream team again. We have a number of them here at the BSCC. And thanks for being willing to do that. Okay, thank you, Aaron, for reminding me what I should have done without a reminder. On to item F. Who comes back in the room and who leaves?
Chavez remains out. I'm not sure I
I
caught
have
them all.
I have Miss Chavez, Mr. Haynes, and Mr. Mills recused. Is that correct? The rest, yeah.
That's what I think that is what I have as well. So Mr. Dykes can come back and Miss Vernon can come back.
And Mills.
I think Chief Mills might be staying out on this one. But let's just ask.
He wants to stay out. Adam?
So for this one, just to make sure, Mills, Haynes, and Chavez are recusing for agenda item F.
Hang on just a minute here. Okay, thank you. Item F. Local law enforcement gun buyback grant program. I'm looking for a motion and a second.
And do we have who we're establishing as the chair for this committee?
Yes,
As
we
part
do.
of the
Thank
motion?
you both for doing that. Again. The kindness here has really overrun the room. Thank you. That would be Dean Grouden. I called him myself and couldn't remember to say it. So thank you to Dean for agreeing to do that. He's on vacation and I'm sure he is looking forward to our dream team. That's my story and I'm sticking to it. So now I'm looking for a motion in a second.
We'll move to approve.
A motion a second, please. Second. We have a second. Adam?
Chair Penner,
Aye.
Miss Allison,
Aye.
Mr. Vera Rosa,
Aye.
Mr. Dyke is recused, Ms. Chavez recused, Mr. Haynes recused, Ms. Vernon,
Aye.
Ms. Guard,
Aye.
Mr. Mills recused, Mr. Budnick,
Aye.
Mr. Garcia, Ms. Kumpion.
Aye. Thank you.
Madam Chair, the motion carries for agenda item F.
Adam, were you able to hear the motion in second?
Yes, that was, the first was Mr. Vera Rosa, second was Miss Allison.
Thank you.
Now we're on to item G, Missing and Murdered Indigenous People Grant Program.
I have Miss Chavez recused only,
Okay.
so I'll get everyone else back.
She actually probably doesn't need to recuse on this one. So I don't know if she wishes
There
to come
she's
back.
back.
And she's back for this one.
Yes, there you are.
And Mr. Dyke has said he wants to recuse from this one as well.
Okay.
Okay, that would be fine.
All right.
Norma, I'm going to voluntarily say that you're going to chair this one without any reminder from the peanut gallery or those people that. There they are. Let the record reflect. Burke Haynes and Andy Mills have returned to the room. Is there any public comment on this item, Adam? Yeah.
I have no public comment on this item.
Thank you. For the record, Norma Kumpion has agreed to do this and we are very excited that you're interested in this effort and also you will get the dream team. So any comments you'd like to make?
I'm just super excited to be on this particular grant and I'm looking forward to it as always to work with the BSCC staff.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm looking for a motion in a second.
I move the motion.
Miguel. Second. Second, we have a motion in a second. Adam?
Chair Penner,
Aye.
Miss Allison,
Aye.
Mr. Vera Rosa,
Aye.
Mr. Dyke is recused, Ms. Chavez recused, Mr. Haynes.
Aye.
Not recused, I'm a yes.
She's, oh yeah, she didn't.
Oh, she didn't. Oh, Ms. Chavez, aye. Ms. Vernon,
Aye.
Ms. Guard,
Aye.
Mr. Mills,
Aye.
Mr. Budnick,
To get a flyer.
Okay.
All right. Absent. Mr. Garcia,
Aye.
Ms. Kumpion.
Aye.
Madam Chair, the motion carries for agenda item G.
Okay, and I think on item H, we'll have both Mr. Haynes, and Ms. Vernon leave, and we'll invite
And
Chairman
Supervisor
Dykus
Chop
back.
and Supervisor Chavez will be recusing on this one too.
Thank you, Supervisor Chavez. It's like, what's that, when you run around the chairs, when, ring around the rosy, yeah, yeah, right, musical chairs. Duck Goose, we're playing that today. Thank you for returning. On item H, it is the Mobile Probation Service Center Grant Program, and chairing that effort will be Stephanie James, the retired chief from San Joaquin County. And looking now for any public comment on this item.
I do not have public comment for this item.
Thank you. I'm looking for a motion in a second.
I'll move.
Thank you.
I second.
Got a couple of seconds. Thank you. Adam?
Chair Penner,
Aye.
Miss Allison,
Aye.
Mr. Villarosa,
Aye.
Mr. Dykes,
Aye.
Ms. Chavez recused, Mr. Haynes recused, Ms. Vernon recused, Ms. Guard,
Aye.
Mr. Mills,
Aye.
Mr. Budnick is absent, Mr. Garcia,
Aye.
Ms. Kumpion.
Aye.
Madam Chair, the motion carries for agenda item H.
Thank you very much. That completes item H. We now move to item I, and I'm a very esteemed presenter on this item.
I'm going to recuse. for
Thank
I.
you.
And yeah, before we take up this item, I would invite Chief Vernon and Chief Haynes to continue to recuse on this item.
Okay.
And then also would ask, it looks like Mr. Butnick may have left already, but
Right.
Ms. Kumpion and Ms. Chavez to recuse as well.
Okay. They heard you coming and left already.
I need fewer people to present this item, Madam
Yeah.
Chair. I appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. This agenda item requests the board to delegate authority to BSCC staff to administer a $3 million transitional housing program for people that are leaving the Department of Juvenile Justice. This was an item of appropriation that was part of the 2022 Budget Act recently signed by the governor. This particular budget item requires the BSCC to contract with one or more public or private organizations, including but not limited to nonprofit organizations and state or local government agencies, to secure and fund up to 1 year of transitional housing for youth who will be discharged from DJJ during fiscal year 2022 to 23, in particular for youth who are at risk of homelessness. To be eligible to receive transitional housing services, youth must be 18 years of age or older and must have discharged by the Board of Juvenile Hearings between July 1st, 2022 and June 30th, 2023. These funds are going to be available for encumbrance through an expenditure through June 30, 2024. According to DJJ, they estimate potentially 293 youth could be discharged from DJJ by June 30th, 2023. The 31 counties which house these youth at DJJ are identified as part of our RFI, that is a part of the attachments. Based on the information that we currently have from DJJ, it's estimated that these services and the youth that might be eligible for these services numbers around 60 right now. And that number, and the way that number has come to us is DJJ works closely with county probation in terms of returning these youth to the county of origin and commitment. And as of now, these youth have not been identified by DJJ as having housing placement. This is prior to discharge from DJJ. Oftentimes, when that youth goes to their court hearing upon return from DJJ, housing will be identified at this time. But as of now, between 50 and 60 people have been identified as not currently having housing. And the purpose of this funds is for us, the BSCC, to be able to contract with, again, either provider or providers, or even perhaps directly with county probation to secure housing for youth that are in danger of being homeless. In response to that, and in anticipation of this item, what we have already done is we released on July 19th a request for information to the field, and we're actively soliciting for potential contractors to administer this housing program, and responses are due back on August 18th. But given the timing of when we hope that we need to be providing these services, what we're asking the board to do is delegate the authority to enter into these contracts to staff so that we can administer this program promptly. With that, Madam Chair, the staff recommendation is that the board delegate authority to staff to administer the transitional youth housing program, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Aaron. Anything from staff on this? I'm sorry, anything from the board on this? Yeah,
So as a former DJJ youth, I critically understand how important housing is, especially at a time where young people are in an institution that is closing down. Hear frequent stories of what's gonna happen to me, once this institution closes down, where am I gonna live? So this pot of money is just really important for those young people that are inside looking for some stability when they return. So thank the BSCC staff and the all-star team that's gonna issue these contracts readily and fast. Thank you.
thank you. Anything else from the board?
Just a question. So we're voting on delegating authority to the staff to administer the contracts themselves, the full 3 million. This doesn't come back to the board to then vote on the contracts themselves. It's full delegation.
That's what we're
It is,
requesting,
yes.
yes.
Thank you.
I think we're trying to be as expedient, it's a problem today, so we're trying to get it done quicker. Okay. Any public comment on this item, Alan?
We have no public comment. for
Thank
this
you.
item.
May I get a motion and a second from
Wait,
someone?
Kathleen Allison, motion to approve due to the urgency of the matter.
Second, please.
A second.
Motion and a second, Adam?
Chair Penner,
Aye.
Ms. Allison,
Aye.
Mr. Vera Rosa,
Aye.
Mr. Dykes.
Aye.
Ms. Chavez recused, Mr. Haynes recused, Ms. Vernon recused, Ms. Guard,
Aye.
Mr. Mills,
Aye.
Mr. Vadenk is absent, Mr. Garcia.
I'm gonna have to ask Mrs. Garcia to come up.
Sorry about that. Ms. Kumpion is recusing from this vote. Madam Chair, the motion carries.
Thank you very much. We can invite all of the recused members back to the room. Adam wants to do every board or board meeting like this so he can do a lot of walking during the meeting. It's super helpful. Okay, and welcome back, everybody. We're at the point in the meeting where it is time for any public comments that anyone would like to talk about. Do we have any members, any public members ready to speak on this portion of the meeting, Adam?
Yes, Madam Chair, we currently have 4 members of the public.
Okay, please close the queue.
Okay, the first one will be Ari Duarte.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ari Duarte. I'm an organizing fellow with Young Women's Freedom Center. I'm here today to advocate for those who are in JJC. This issue regarding the COVID outbreak in Los Angeles is very concerning to many different counties and communities. This issue should have been handled properly by having deputies and counselors being tested regularly. Young folks are catching COVID from staff members who are bringing it inside. These young folks may have medical conditions and they are being confined in their cells, and yet they are the ones who are suffering because staff are neglecting their rights. The Freedom Charter states that we have the right to make our own medical care decisions and access quality medical care and on-demand preventative care for our physical, mental, emotional, dental, vision, and reproductive health. From this Freedom Charter, these young folks have their right to have the proper medical care, and that right has clearly been neglected. So far from this meeting, I haven't heard anything about how you, the BSCC, are all going to properly address this issue. I also have yet to hear anything about having the young youth being educated about vaccines, having access to the vaccines, having access to their mask, or even access to family support them while they are inside. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Maribi Martin. Maribi. We'll move on to Leah. Leah, C-O. And we'll move on to Miguel Cesar. Miguel,
Okay, hearing nothing, I think that,
we do have one more. That would be Avalon.
okay,
Can you hear me?
yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, members of the board. Hi again. My name is Avalon Edwards. I'm a policy associate with Starting Over Inc., which is a transitional housing and reentry services provider based in Riverside County. I've spoken to members of this board on multiple occasions over the last 2 years to highlight some of the horrifying conditions that are standard in Riverside County jails. Today, I hope to bring attention to the abundance of deaths occurring in Riverside County custody. This year alone, there have been at least 6 deaths in custody. One of those who passed was Michael Vasquez, who was only 20 years old when he died in May. Michael was arrested on May 20th and died only 6 days later while in custody. The Riverside County Coroner's Office, which is joined with our Sheriff's Department, declared his death an overdose and refused to give his grieving family any further information. Michael's mother couldn't even see his body for several days until he had already been embalmed. Michael's blood is on the hands of the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, who was responsible for his health and safety at the time of his passing. By extension, his death and all other in-custody deaths are also the responsibility of the BSCC to investigate further. Michael deserved better, and his family deserves accountability. As the agency responsible for overseeing jail conditions, I hope the BSCC will investigate this disturbing trend of in-custody deaths in Riverside County to ensure the safety of the 3,500 folks in custody in Riverside on a daily basis. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you. Thank you. And that then brings this meeting to an end. And I appreciate all of your attendance and goodbye.